To Dan's Model Works, and we're on another field trip, and once again we are at the Canadian Transportation Museum in Heritage Village in Kingsville, Ontario. And today we're going to be visiting with one of my favorite subjects, that is the GM Transit Bus, the New Look Bus, otherwise known as the Fishbowl. And they've got one here that they're going to be starting, and they're going to try to move it. This is the Canadian Transportation Museum's GM New Look Bus, and they're going to be trying to fire this up and get it moved so they can move it to a different location in the museum grounds. And it's been about a year and a half since the last time they had it running and it's moved, so we'll have to see how that turns out. So they're going to be moving this old bus, and you can see the GMC V6. Been working for a few hours to get this bus ready to be moved, just so that they can move it to a part of the museum where it's a little bit less prone to vandalism than where it is. And you can hear it chortling away in the background. Music to anyone my age who rode these buses every day. Now this is a Windsor bus, and as you can see, tunnel bus. So I believe this bus actually went through the tunnel between Windsor and Detroit. This is another one of their diamonds in the rough that eventually they will get around to restoring. The important thing is it's sitting here waiting to be restored, and it's not going to be melted down for scrap aluminum, because of course the whole body on a GMC New Look or Fishbowl is aluminum. Enough air in it to release the brakes. They're going to try to get it to move. It's a little smoky, but it certainly sounds good. Still not ready to move. To somebody who spent a good chunk of their life in the 80s riding these buses, this is music to my ears to hear one of these running. They're just trying to pump up the air so they can release the brakes. Well, it doesn't look like it's going to be moving today, because since it's been sitting in that spot for about a year, the brake drums, the shoes are rusted onto the drums, and they're going to have to free them up before it'll move. But nevertheless, it was nice to hear the old girl roaring away. Certainly brings back memories. Here's a front shot of former Windsor Bus number 912. Now if we look carefully, we can't see the logo that should be at the very front of the bus, and it would normally tell us whether it was an American built or Canadian built bus. If it says GMC, it's generally an American built bus. If it says GM, it's generally a Canadian bus. And my assumption is since it was a bus owned by Windsor Transit, that this is a Canadian built bus. Now this is the back half of the bus, and you can see that it has the double width doors. I don't know what percentage of transit buses had the double width doors. Probably about only a quarter of the ones that I ever rode on had those extra wide double doors. Most of them had the single doors. Notice as well that there's no lower windows in these doors. They were oftentimes rebuilt by the bus companies, and there's a few patches around the rear wheel opening where they've had to replace areas that had corrosion. The interesting thing is I don't see any evidence that there was any large advertising on the side of this bus. Now here's a sight you didn't want to see if you were trying to catch this bus, because there's nothing worse than looking at a bus like this when it's driving away. Once again, there doesn't seem to be any sign hold or anything for the back, although it's possible it may have been removed before coming to the museum. In this still shot, you can see that all of the back seats have been flipped up and propped out of the way, and that there's a hatch allowing access to the engine compartment. And this is hardly surprising, seeing as the V6 engine is actually tilted forward, I think, at a 45-degree angle, which certainly makes the innermost bank of cylinders difficult to get at. This is a close-up of that previous shot, and I've basically zoomed in on that hatch over the engine. Now I don't know where the cover is, but normally it would be in place. The seats just wouldn't be floating over the engine. However, it's interesting in that you can see the exhaust manifold for that side of the engine, and it certainly gives you some idea of why sitting on the rear bench of these seats tended to be a little bit warm. In this still shot of the engine compartment, there is a grayish-green rectangle with two circles, and that is the valve cover of one of the banks of the V6. And right underneath that there's a rusty object, and that of course is the exhaust manifold for that half of the engine. And it illustrates how the entire V6 has been laid on its side in order to fit it into the bus better and to improve access. This is a shot of the rear doors from the inside, and those red objects are the gates that passengers would push on in order to open the rear doors. Now, I don't know about you, but I always thought these gates just looked a little wrong. Perhaps all they need is a shot of Viagra.